Hello and welcome to Latter-day Profiles. I'm Brian Howard. We're here at the LDS Motion Picture Studio in Provo, Utah. And joining me today is Kim Clark. Kim, welcome. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
A lot of people recognize you for a number of different things, but currently a National Advisory Council Distinguished Professor of Management at the BYU Marriott School of Business, which I've heard you say is kind of a dream job to teach there, which is awesome. Teach a class called Leadership in the Gospel of Jesus Christ, which we want to talk more about a little bit later. Former Dean of the Harvard Business School, BYU-Idaho, president there. That's where I got to know President Clark. Still always have to call you President Clark. It's kind of like a habit kind of thing. I served as a General Authority 70, now emeritus, and also was a Commissioner of Church Education for several years in there as well. Married to his wife, Sue, with 7 children, and it was 26 grandchildren now, and looking forward to maybe some greats coming up in the next few years. So.
Right.
I asked you when we were off camera, back when you were at BYU-Idaho, then you had a kidney transplant, and it's been going pretty well. So how's your health?
Good. Yeah, it really helps to have a very young kidney. It really does. I'm really grateful to my son, Andrew, who gave me one of his kidneys. But it's going well.
Oh, that's good. You now teach at BYU. How did that come about?
So when I was coming up to age 70 and I knew I'd be released as a general authority, I started thinking about what do I want to do? And the back of my mind, since I was in graduate school, was to teach at BYU. And so I talked with Sue about it, we prayed about it, and decided that felt right. So then I just asked people if they'd be interested in having me come down, and they were, and so I did. It's been great. Started in 2019, so I'm finishing up my 6th year this semester. So.
I remember, I think, I didn't know you were down here, and I saw it was a devotional, or I think worldwide, and they asked you to say a prayer. And I said, wait, and the super underneath was, at the Marriott School, and so I had to look up and make sure that was you, which it was, and very excited about that. And I told you I kind of forced my son into taking a class because I wanted to take a class from you, but he loved it after the fact because it was hard. It was a hard class, but let's talk about that. You teach a class, it's called Leadership in the Gospel of Jesus Christ. What goes into that class?
So the basic idea is to help students realize and know how to use gospel principles in leadership, wherever they are, their homes, work, church, anywhere. And so the gospel is kind of the spine of the course, and then we introduce the leadership dimensions of those principles, and then we do business cases, organizational cases, where we then bring the gospel into those cases. So we try to weave it together. Each week is a gospel principle and then a case that kind of uses that principle in leadership. It's been really great experience. One of the things that happens to young people, and a lot of us too, is we compartmentalize our minds. Mm-hmm. So they have a business brain and they have a church brain, and they don't really see how the two connect. They keep the commandments, but they don't really use gospel principles in their work.
That's interesting.
And a lot of times in their families. So I'm trying to help them see that gospel principles are powerful anywhere.
Do you have an example of like a case where it shows that integration of the gospel principles being put to use in the business or family world?
Yeah, there are a lot of them. But here's a good example. Today we talked about priesthood, power, and authority. And you have in that setting wonderful scriptures in the Doctrine and Covenants where the Lord really taught us about how we should think about his priesthood and its authority and power. And one of the principles is that power needs to be used his way, doing his work. Well, that principle can apply in business. And we do a case on a company that has developed an approach to leadership that is grounded in a lot of what's in D&C 121. And then you watch and see what they're doing, and you can really see that their principles and practices really woven together, and that power in that setting, in that company, is not about exercising power over people. So it's not compulsion or dominion or control. It's about activating the power that's in the people. It's about using whatever power you have to empower other people and do it in the right way. So that's an example. And then every other gospel principle, there's a similar kind of situation.
Goes with it. Is it because, we have you're church and state, right? You have to separate those things out. Do you think that is a reason why people are, separate those things out? It's just business, or it's church, or it's family?
Yeah, well, first of all, the phrase "it's just business" is really not true.
Yeah.
Because it's never just about business, it's always about people. But I think a lot of people naturally want to fit in. They want to get, comfortable with their environment. And so they learn how to talk and how to work and how things get done and how we operate here in this organization. And then they act that way. And then they go to church and they do the same thing. And we're trying to help them see that you can really bring those principles and they work really well.
I want to talk more about that. In fact, I want to talk about your book, Leading Through. We'll talk about that in a minute. But it's interesting, after being at Harvard and then at BYU-Idaho and then serving as the Commissioner of Church Education, how was a different perspective? What did you see from that level as far as the educational system in the church, and what kind of insights did you gain?
So it was a really powerful experience to go to BYU-Idaho, of course, amazing place. But I also learned something about education in general. And one of the principles that I learned at BYU-Idaho, I kind of understood a little bit when I was at Harvard Business School, but it really was very clear at BYU-Idaho, was the idea of deep learning. That we are here. Part of our purpose on earth is to learn, but to learn deeply, which means not only in your mind, but in your heart, understanding in your heart, and learning how to actually act in ways that are righteous and effective using those principles, and then also then to learn to become something, to become more and more like the Savior and our Father in heaven. And all of that is learning. And so deep learning is really about the whole soul. And that was a really powerful idea. And it informed a lot of what we did at BYU-Idaho and a lot of what I saw in church education. So that was one idea. A second idea is that the church educational system is part of the church. It says church educational system, but you think of it, well, the church kind of sponsors this, but it's out here. But actually, in reality, education is a really important part of the gospel. And the church educational system is really committed to providing education of different kinds wherever the church is organized. And the most global example is now BYU Pathway and seminaries and institutes. And BYU Pathways becoming more and more like seminaries and institutes.
Oh, yeah.
So wherever the church is organized, you find both of them. And now we have other programs like Succeed in School that are becoming like that. And the universities are playing a role in making all of that happen so that the church can really flourish, because the Lord taught us very clearly as we grow and learn, we become more able to carry out his work. And the church flourishes as we learn deeply. So it's not just cognitive, it becomes something that's really inside of us and is based on the Spirit and on true principles.
And you mentioned Succeed to Learn Right, I think is what it's called.
Succeed in School.
Succeed in School.
Yeah.
What is that? Tell us about it.
So let's see now, it's probably about 8 years ago, we started a little pilot idea to address a really fundamental problem in less developed countries, which is that many, many children never get much of an education.
Yeah.
Even if they go to school, they don't get much of an education. So we thought, is there something the church can do and ought to do to support families and individuals in learning? So we ran this idea that, well, what if we had them just for a little while after school each day, and we helped them with reading and math, study skills, exam skills, and also for the kids who are old enough, seminary, so that we could hopefully help them get better at learning in general. Because a lot of kids that we saw in these less developed countries can't read
Yeah.
and can't do basic math. So they can't pass national exams. They don't really have much education. And we started it, and it worked.
Oh, that's
It
good.
worked great, actually. It was amazing how much it worked. Just an hour after school each day with called teachers using a curriculum designed to really help people use church materials in their reading, and then we taught math and study skills and so forth. And now it's been approved by the board as a regular program of the church. It sits inside Seminaries and Institute organization and is now really flourishing. It's growing rapidly. It's in Africa especially, but also in Mexico
Oh, yeah.
and the Pacific Islands, and also now the North America Southwest area has been approved for Succeed in School.
Wow.
So I think over time it will continue to grow. It really blesses people's lives because you can imagine what it's like growing up in the church and not being able to read the Book of Mormon or the Bible or any scripture. You can't read.
Yeah.
How hard that is. Even though you feel the Spirit and you can listen to people talk, you can't really sit and study the scriptures. Makes a big difference.
Yeah. You know, based on that perspective of programs like that, and you mentioned, you know, sometimes we feel like the educational system sits out here, but really how central is it to the mission of the church?
Well, it's really important. Education in general is a religious responsibility that we have. The Lord's put it upon us. And the Lord has seen fit to create institutions like BYU-Idaho and BYU, seminaries and institutes, BYU Pathway, to bring education, make it accessible to members of the church all over the world. And there's a hunger for education. And so, for example, if BYU Pathway can take a group of people in a certain part of the world and lift them up so they can earn enough money that they can support their family and serve in the church instead of working 4 jobs, that's huge for the church. It means you have stronger families, you have people who can serve, the church grows. It's amazing.
Yeah, the ultimate self-reliance, right? Being
Yeah, they become pillars of the kingdom. And the Lord asks us to do that, and education plays a really critical role.
I want to talk about the book. By the way, my college dean gifted this to all of us, so we thank
Wise
her.
woman.
The Wise Woman, Leading Through Activating the Soul, Heart, and Mind of Leadership.
Yeah.
3 authors on here, Kim B. Clark, Jonathan R. Clark, and Aaron E. Clark. It sounds like they're relatives, right? I was working with your kids.
Son and daughter.
Yeah.
It was a great experience. Really, for me, it was like amazing experience because, you know, I've known them since they were born.
Yeah.
And to work with them professionally like this has been just amazing. They're both really, really good at what they do. And it was just a sweet, sweet experience. Yeah.
Let's talk about the book. What brought this about? What was the impetus for writing the book?
So I think the primary impetus was, for all of us, was recognizing that we have, for a long, long time in the world, certainly in this country, in the world, we've been searching for better ways to lead. And we've been hampered by a paradigm that has been in place for over 100 years, that started with the Second Industrial Revolution, that is based on what we call power over. It's a paradigm of executive action that focuses on achieving compliance by controlling people, creating a hierarchy that's very bureaucratic, has a lot of direct supervision, and really hampers the ability to innovate. It treats people primarily as cogs in the machine, cogs in the gears of the machine, and it stifles innovation. It fails to realize people's potential. It even fails its moral responsibility. And so we felt like we need a new way of thinking about leadership. Now, there are lots of leadership books, and we drew on a lot of work that's been done and a lot of things that are happening in practice, but we felt like we need to pull it all together into a new paradigm. And that's what Leading Through is.
Well, let's talk about that new paradigm, because I think anybody who's worked at pretty much any job has felt the old paradigm.
Yes,
The
it's
power,
everywhere.
the power over. So what's the new shift? And you talk about power over versus power through.
Right. So leadership has two dimensions always. It's always personal, but we think it's important to recognize it's organizational. Okay. And so the personal side is the soul, heart, and mind. That you need to have the soul of leadership, that is the desire to do good, to make things better. You need heart, which focuses on helping people thrive. And you need the mind to make good decisions, solve problems, develop a strategy, take action, and do all of that in a way that lifts and strengthens the people in the organization, achieves its purpose, but also improves its productivity. So leadership is about mobilizing people in a process of action, learning, and change to increase the viability and vitality of the organization. So that's sort of the idea behind leadership. And leading through is built on the idea that the way you activate the soul, heart, and mind is you create an organization with its processes and its focus in which power is used through people, not over them. Power through means that you as a leader, wherever you work, you could be the CEO, you could be a team leader, you could be an individual, wherever you have the ability to use your influence, you do it to activate the potential that is in other people. And where that permeates the organization, it's like magic happens, where you get lots of initiative and lots of people taking action to kind of make things better. But you need also what we call a system. You need a leadership system. We call it the modular leadership system, so that you can take action in a team, for example, without a lot of direct supervision and without a lot of control, because you have what we call visible information. You know what the strategy is, you know how to get work done, you have good information about what else is going on, so your work can fit. And the whole then becomes far more than just the sum of its parts. So to have that kind of organizational framework coupled with this deep commitment to helping people thrive is how you make organizations thrive. So that's we have a thing called the Leading Through Institute. Our little tagline is thriving people, thriving organizations.
So instead of me being the boss telling you what to do, and you need to do it either because or to get a raise or some sort of thing like that, instead, I'm trying to empower my employees to do things, to be innovative on their own, but to give them the information and the organization so that they don't feel threatened, punished, or some other thing that are normal ways of getting people to do
So it's
stuff.
not coercion, control, compulsion, any of that stuff. It's about helping people see the opportunity in front of them and then supporting them and going after it.
Yeah.
And, sometimes you have to deal with real people who have problems and stuff happens. But even then, you need to do it in a way that generates light, not darkness. Because sometimes people do things that are not right. And you give them opportunities to change and grow. But if they're not, you have to do it in the way that help them find something else, or do it in a way that generates light rather than darkness.
Yeah, there was one term that's in your book. It's called organizational darkness.
Yeah.
How do you avoid that, right? Is that just people not knowing what's going on, or is it just dampening the,
Well, sometimes it's people not knowing what's going on, but it's also kind of like the natural man in us pops up. And, people do things that are not right. They hurt other people, they take advantage, they lie, they steal. And that creates darkness in the sense that those actions breed distrust.
Gotcha.
They make things difficult to discern what's right, what's wrong, what's true, what's not true. And so it becomes like a tax on the organization. People don't trust one another. They don't communicate very well. They harbor their own information. There's a lot of politics that happens. And it becomes like a tax on the organization. Light is just the opposite. So light are activities that lift people. Darkness damages people. And, there's simple kinds of darkness like, I get crabby or cranky and I complain, but it can become contempt. It can become discrimination, become, even harassment, and then fraud.
Yeah.
All sorts of bad stuff happens.
Are there organizations, you don't have to name names, of course, but organizations that do this well already?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
there's plenty of organizations that don't do well. I'm pretty sure about that.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and how do they manage it? Because I think it's probably easier to use the previous method because you just
Oh,
tell
yeah.
them what to do and they do it. The other one takes a lot of work and effort, I would assume.
Yeah, so people think that, well, I have power, I'll just tell them what to do, and I'll make them do it. I'll supervise them, I'll set standards, procedures, you have to follow this, if you don't, I'll fire you.
Yeah.
Right? Well, that is an illusion because it appears you have power, but actually you don't get that much out of people because they're fearful
Right.
and resentful and they don't have freedom of action. So the idea is for us to recognize that if you build the right kind of structure and you create the right set of ideas that animate what you do, you get not only unity or, kind of unity of effort, but you get initiative. And the total is way, way better than you could do with the old system.
Yeah. People buy into it.
People buy into it.
It.
You get much more of their energy. You get their minds, you get their hearts. They kind of really get into it and do it. Yeah.
And I want to ask you about this because this is a hot topic, artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Where does that play a role? What are the pros and cons? How should you deal with that in a leadership situation?
So artificial intelligence is really powerful. It's quite amazing, actually. But I think the right way to think about it is that its real power is in kind of what some writers have called co-creation, where you learn how to use the technology to amplify the very best of what people can do and let the AI do things that it is really good at doing. And the combination can be very powerful. So I think everybody needs to learn how to use AI. It's just going to be everywhere because it's amazing what you can do. And too many of our organizations have relied on people as machines instead of people as people. And it will take time. There's a transition underway. And this one is going very fast.
Yeah.
So there's a transition, but I think this is like lots and lots of technological changes taken place over the years, over the centuries, really.
Yeah.
There are dislocations and difficulties, but in time, people can learn how to use the technology and advance human endeavor and help us be a much more productive and a much better place. Now, you can also use AI to deepen the old paradigm.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
If you want to control things, this is a great technology. If you want to get in charge of everything and have just everything happens the way you want, you can make it happen. So it's a choice we're going to make. Do we want to liberate people and empower them and help them realize their potential, or are we going to kind of keep more control, more compulsion on them?
Same history all the time. Get a new innovation. How we use it can be used for good and evil.
That's it.
Hopefully we take it the right direction.
That's it.
Obviously some
We'll
people
probably
won't.
see both.
Yeah. I would imagine. Much like the internet, right?
Much like the
no
internet.
escaping that. You've had the opportunity to interact a lot with students now, both right now teaching. Also, you're able to teach at freshman level, graduate level. What do you see in them that gives you hope for moving forward, that these young men and women are taking us in the right direction?
So and I felt this all through my career, is every time I walk into a classroom, the students seem to get younger. They are the same age that they always have been, but I'm getting older and older and older. But they're the same age. And so you watch over time generations of students. And I've been teaching professionally since about 1972. So I don't know, you do the math.
Yeah, a few years.
It's a few years. And watching that happen, there are great young people and have been since then. What I see different among the students that I teach now is they are really committed. The ones I get, because I'm an elective. They don't take my class unless they really want to take it. they really are committed to the Lord, and they want to do His work, and they want to do what's right, and they're all in. And you go into a temple today, anywhere in the world, you see all these young people in the temple now being ordinance workers and stuff. They're committed. They're in. And as long as they continue to keep their covenants and do the things daily that you need to do to stay close to the Lord, they're going to be fantastic, because the Lord will work through them to do amazing things, and we'll see it.
It's been fun up in Rexburg. A lot of students, especially when the tracks are on. On the off track, it's a little bit different, but everyone else, there's a lot of students working there at the temple, so it's a pleasure to see them.
Oh yeah, it's an indicator of the great blessings the Lord desires to pour out upon them.
Kimby Clark, National Advisory Council Distinguished Professor of Management at the BYU Marriott School. Great to have an opportunity to talk with you. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
For taking a few minutes. Thank you.
You're welcome.